I heard the front door fly open and slam shut. Desperate panting followed. Then came the clicking of door locking. "Fuck," I heard him say. I knew the voice. It was my favorite Uncle Tommy, and from the sounds of it, he was in trouble. I abandoned my toys on the living room floor and hurried down the front hall. Sure enough, there was Uncle Tommy. He was too busy trying to push off a chest of drawers in front of the door to notice me. "Adam?" My mother called from the kitchen. "What's going on out there?" "It's Uncle Tommy," I shouted, without him moving or averting my eyes. Having covered half of the door with my burrow, my uncle pressed his back against it and slid down the floor like melting ice cream. He looked so small and so scared, leaning against that hulking piece of furniture, his eyes wide and his face drained of color. My mother appeared in the doorway behind me. "Tommy?" He sprang to life and hopped to his feet. "Judith!" He called my mother by name. "I have to talk to you, please." His eyes were wide and pleading. Before there was another word could be said, my mother ushered Tommy to another room and closed the door. I tried not to listen, but curiosity won out. I pressed my ear against the door and strained to make out what the adults were saying. All I caught were the odd words and phrases. "After me," "put me up," "please," "danger." There was a pause. The next voice I heard was my mother's. "All right." This door opened again, and I raced away from it, attempting to look as innocent as possible. Tommy stepped out first. He smiled slightly, and I saw some of the color that had returned to his face. My mother followed this time. She seemed pale and anxious. She turned and addressed us both. "I was just about to start dinner. It should be ready in a half an hour." "Thank you," Tommy said. My mother gave a small nod, then she turned and disappeared down the hall. Tommy turned to me and smiled broadly, acknowledging my presence for the first time since he arrived. "Hey there, sport," he called me by his favorite nickname for me. "Looks like I'll be staying for the night." "Great," I exclaimed. It'd always been good time when Uncle Tommy paid a visit. "Can we tell ghost stories like last time?" His smile disappeared. Maybe. We'll see." Satisfied with that answer, I led him back to the living room where we both sat on the floor and proceeded to duel with action figures. As we played, I couldn't help but notice how often Tommy glanced towards the window. As I always become more interested in my next move than I ever was whatever he was looking for, and so I never asked him why. Even if I did, though, I'm sure it had made no difference. My mother came into the room, her face stony and white as before. "Dinner is ready," she said. Dinner was an awkward affair. We ate mostly in silence. I noticed that mother barely touched what's on her plate. Occasionally she would ask Tommy, "How are the potatoes, the peas, the chops?" His answers were the same each time. "Delicious, thank you." He would punctuate the declaration with another bite, as if we're trying to convince her of something. At last, Tommy tried to start a conversation. "Judith," he said, "I appreciate you letting me—" "Shh!" My mother cut him off with a surprising vehemence. She then seemed to notice how suspicious her behavior was and made an effort to soften her features. "It's no trouble," she said, "really." As the meal drew to a close, Uncle Tommy seemed to have yawned more and more. He would try and handle the yawns politely first, but eventually they just became so frequent and so deep that he could do nothing about them. "You seem tired," my mother said. "Yes," Tommy agreed. "It's been an exhausting day." "Why don't you head up to bed?" Tommy rose from his table. "I think I may have to." He turned to me. "Sorry to be so tired, sport. Maybe tomorrow we'll tell some stories." I only made the slightest effort to hide my disappointment. "Okay," I said, and I pushed a clump of mashed potatoes around my plate. My mother followed Tommy out of the room, and I heard his manly footsteps climb the stairs. A few moments passed before my mother poked her head back in the room. "Adam," she said, "will you help me with something?" I hopped out of my seat and followed her to the front hall. They were teamed up to push the chest of drawers back into place. With the task complete, my mother crouched down to my level and leaned in close. "Now, Adam," she began, "I need you to listen very carefully. You are to go straight to bed and stay there. Do not come out of your room until morning, for any reason." I was confused. "Did I do something wrong?" I asked. No, she said, petting the sides of my face. "You haven't done anything. I just need you to do this for me. Just stay in your room until the sun comes up. You'll be safe, I promise, okay?" "Okay," I said. Even at such young age, I had a sense that questioning would lead to nowhere. Instead, I headed up the stairs to do as my mother asked. As I rounded the corner at the top of the stairs, I caught a glimpse of my mother, turning the lock on the front door. Weird, I remember thinking. I could have sworn Uncle Tommy locked it already. I must have fallen asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow, because there was my memory stops. The very next thing I remember is awakening in the darkness of my room. The only light came from the digital clock that sat beside my bed. The time was 3:33 a.m. As I lay blinking, trying to set the numbers right in my vision, I heard a strange sound. It began as a soft, far-away click. I realized very quickly that it was coming from somewhere outside. The click came closer and developed into a rhythmic thump. Footsteps, I decided, heavy ones on the road below, heading past the house. The foot thumps were getting closer than ever, and they suddenly stopped. Whoever had been walking outside seemed to have stopped right in front of the house. I was just about to roll over and try to get back to sleep when a new sound stopped me in my tracks. "Tommy!" a voice called from the street below. It was one I'd never heard before. A strange middle tone that made it hard to tell if it was male or female. "Tommy!" it called again. It kept calling. "Tommy! Tommy! Tommy! Tommy!" Over and over. It called my uncle's name. The call was rhythmic, almost unnaturally so. As the calling continued, I realized I was shaking. Something about that voice was simply wrong. I could feel it. There was no other word to describe how I felt. And it got worse. The rhythm ceased, but each repetition of my uncle's name now becoming frantic, grating, as if the caller were now desperate for his attention, as if their life depended on it. "Tommy! Tommy! Tommy! Tommy!" I couldn't stop but start crying. I grabbed my pillow and covered my head with it, repeating my mother's words over and over in my mind. "Just stay in your room until the sun comes up. You'll be safe, I promise." I prayed that she was right. I felt some amount of shame now as I looked back at the night. My thoughts were mostly for my own safety. When it was my uncle's name that voice kept calling, I should have been thinking of him. But then again, even if I had to, I'm not sure I could have done anything to change what happened. That scream will forever be burned in my memory. The one scream came from within the house. Tommy's scream. It drowned out the endless repetitions from the street. With my head still under the pillow, I heard the door to Tommy's room fly open, still howling in agony. He bounded down for the stairs. The front door opened and slammed shut again. He was screaming in the street below, trailing further and further away along with the frantic caller, who would not stop shouting his name. Their voices became fainter and fainter until I couldn't hear them anymore. I lay shivering in the dark silence. It must have been more than my child consciousness could withstand, because I soon fell asleep again. The next thing I knew, it was morning. The events of the night before swirled in my brain. According to my mother, it should have been safe to come out of my room now, but the safe was absolute last thing I felt. I sat in my bed and waited for some sign that it was all well and I could move again. It came in the form of a delicious aroma. "Adam," I heard my mom call from the bottom of the stairs. "Come have your breakfast." For the first time since 3:33 in the morning, I felt my muscles relaxed. I took a deep breath and pulled myself out of bed, feeling much better about everything. I found my mother in the kitchen, assembling 2 hearty breakfast plates. "Did Uncle Tommy leave?" I asked. My mother frowned. "Oh yes, he'd left. He said he couldn't stay for breakfast. He's sorry he couldn't stay and tell you his story." "He just left?" I asked. "I thought I heard him leave so late last night. It was dark and he took off screaming, and then there was a voice—" "Shh!" My mother cut me off. The urgency in her voice frightened me. She must have known because again, she softened. You must have dreamed about it, bud, she said. A smile formed on her lips, but never quite reached her eyes. What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.